But Kethevane Gorjestani, our international affairs editor, is joining me here on set now. Kethevane, looking back at what happened a year ago, I mean, it was a historic security failure, wasn't it? I mean, how on earth was Hamas able to do what it did a year ago?
Well, that is the question that all Israelis want answered. And the reason why we don't have really an answer to that question is, as Iris was pointing out, the fact that the government has not been willing to start an official investigation into what happened. So the picture we're getting is through media reporting, as well as the civilian investigation that has been started by the families of some of the hostages or some of the victims, where they've interviewed former intelligence officers, former politicians, to try to get to the point of what happened. But the picture all of this is painting is that the failure was threefold. There was a military failure with a lot of warning signs that were not taken seriously or not listened to by a military leader, with those reports of observers on the border with Gaza talking about what they were seeing on the border for the weeks leading up to October 7th, and the fact that it took hours for soldiers to actually reach those who were being attacked. Then there was the intelligence failure. If you remember, there was this big report by the New York Times that got its hands on a 40-page plan by Hamas that they say the Israelis had gotten hold of a year before October 7th. The Israelis dubbed it a Jericho wall, and that plan was extremely detailed. It did not give a date, but everything else in that plan seemed to be what happened on October 7th, from the drones that knocked out the security cameras and the automatic machine guns on that wall, to the plan to have those hundreds of militants pouring into Israel through the cracks of the wall in paragliders. All of that actually happened, but the Israeli military and Israeli intelligence leaders seem to have sort of dismissed that plan as aspirational for Hamas, believing that Hamas was not capable of conducting such an elaborate plan. And that takes us to possibly the political failure, which is this idea that Israel was so superior in its military might and in its intelligence and its security that Hamas could not be that big of a threat. And there was, of course, the distraction of the internal political crisis in Israel, and also, according to a lot of experts, possibly too much focus on the broader threats abroad, like in Lebanon with Hezbollah, or even Iran, to pay that much attention to what was happening right there on the border with Gaza.
So what about the Israeli response in Gaza? I mean, has Israel achieved its goals? I mean, the news that we've been bringing you over the last few moments shows that perhaps the answer is no.
Absolutely. So there were really two goals that the Israelis put out from the get-go: defeat Hamas, release the hostages. Defeat Hamas, the Israelis said yesterday that they had defeated Hamas. In their words, what that exactly means is very unclear, because yes, of course, Hamas is extremely weakened. The Israelis believe they've killed about 17,000 of their militants. They've destroyed a number of tunnels. They've destroyed widespread infrastructure in Gaza, which also impacts Hamas. They've killed a lot of the highest commanders and leaders within the group. But that said, they haven't gotten rid of Hamas because they're still throwing rockets at Israel. So they're not fully defeated. They're weakened at best. The other goal was to free all of the hostages. That also is not done yet. There were 255 hostages taken on October 7th. 112 of them were released in that one and only ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. That was back in November. Since then, a few were rescued. Several other were actually found, recovered, but they were already dead. And so we have still nearly 100 people who are being held hostage. At least half of them are believed to still be alive. But given the situation right now, especially with Lebanon and the focus of the Israeli leadership on Lebanon, it doesn't look like the release of these hostages is going to happen anytime soon. Plus, you have to add to that the sort of turning tide of the international community after a year of what they're seeing happening in Gaza with the humanitarian toll, the civilian death toll, all of that, showing that Israel is more and more isolated on the international stage, bar the support, of course, of the United States.
Kethevane, thanks very much. Kethevane Gorjestani, international affairs editor here on France 24.